Hello and welcome to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Dan Hancock, the Mental Health PT, Danny Williams and Ben Lewis. I absolutely love this episode. It's potentially one of my favourites, and you may look at the time and see that it is almost 2 hours long, and boy, it is a very, very good 2 hours. I was hooked the whole time. This podcast is with Matt Morton. He's a good friend of all of ours. He is the commercial director for Amplify. He is a semi-professional footballer, and he is also one of the only footballers in the world, out of only 8 people, to openly come out as gay. And he tells us his story. He shares some of his life lessons, why he's so driven, and all of the amazing things that he wants to accomplish with his movement in the future. So guys, really hope that you enjoy this incredible episode. Hi guys, Dan here. I'm super excited to announce that today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by the online therapy app Mindler. Mindler makes accessing therapy easy, as appointments are all carried out online via video calls with psychologists. Look guys, we know how much the last couple of years has impacted people's mental health, and I feel having professional support as readily available and easily accessible as possible is so important. So please, anyone listening, if you're struggling with your mental health or just need someone to talk to, why not give Mindler a go? You can choose which psychologist you'd like to speak to, see their bio, photo, any specialities, all this type of important stuff before you book, because it's massively important, again, to build a solid relationship with this individual so that trust is there. Mindler is offering all Happy to Health listeners one free session. So just use the code Happy to Health. That's HAPPY, the number 2, HEALTH, and please go to mindler.co.uk to find out more. I'm a big fan of Matt's and everything that he does and everything that he stands for, so I think it's absolutely incredible to be joined by him today. Matt, thank you. How are you getting on?
Thank you very much. Yeah, good, thank you. Yourself?
Yes, yeah, mate. Guys, we're all good?
All good. Happy to be back.
Happy to be here, and thanks for joining us, Matt.
Yeah. My pleasure.
So, Matt, probably best way to get started, tell everyone who's listening a little bit about you, your background, your journey through football and into the career that you have now.
Yeah, so I am the son of a Premier League referee, or ex-Premier League referee, so that was kind of my introduction into football when I was young. Massive football family. Mum's Irish, so she's a bit crazy. She's a crazy fan.
And like the Scottish.
And my dad is the opposite, kind of old school, middle class English, calm, much more easygoing chap, and that's probably why he's a referee. Like most of them, never really played the game properly to any decent level, so decided to referee instead. But in that, he managed to excel. If you can excel in refereeing, I still say you can't, but he would say that you can. But yeah, made it to professional and FIFA. Premier League, refereed Man United, which is why I ended up supporting them. It was the first professional ground that I ever went to.
Brilliant.
Well, it was the second. The first was Scunthorpe, but I wasn't going to support Scunthorpe.
We haven't got to mention Scunthorpe.
I knew Scunthorpe would come up in this podcast at some point.
Always does. I've just alienated all the Scunthorpe fans already. So yeah, but yeah. So Man United, I supported from that point, and then really ironically, considering I was the youngest of the 3 children, I was the first to support Man United, and then the whole family ended up supporting Man United off the back of it. So it was that's my little claim to fame there, Man United Mortons. And then grew up in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk, so kind of between Essex and Cambridge, and went to school at Colford, played rugby most of my childhood instead of football because it was a private school, so I had this kind of passion and love for football. My dad used to get to referee professionals every week. I'd go to the grounds, but I barely played it, so I got very good at rugby and played for the East of England, and that was kind of the done thing in private school, and it was rugby, hockey, cricket every year, and I hated all 3. So I ended up joining a football club at under 10s level, so I started much later than pretty much everyone that plays football, who start as soon as they're kind of 2 or 3 are able to walk. And you could tell, so at under 10s I was atrocious, and every time that the ball would come back to me, they put me at the back for obvious reasons. Don't want me on the ball at all, just stop other people doing what you can't do. Perfect. Ball comes to me, and then literally it was that bad for the first few months that people would run behind me before I'd even kicked it. Probably miss the ball.
Did you go and run and rugby tackle them after that?
Well, that generally did happen as well. There was a lot of red cards in the early years, but not a lot of talent. So I got a lot better at the defensive side of the game, and I went kind of within 12 months from being the worst player to player of the season. And I did that every year throughout youth football. I think every year I won either managers or players player of the year, which for me at the time, being young and being a rugby player and being bloody awful at the beginning was a hell of an achievement. But I ended up then quitting rugby, leaving the private school and asking to go to state school, which was a great decision, and then just carried on with football. I look back now and I regret probably not taking it to the next level. So I had clubs come in, like Ipswich Town, for example, at youth level, and some of my friends were there at the academy. And it just seemed like so much pressure and not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you see the release rate, and I've always probably been a bit older in my head than I am physically, so I would always analyse things and make decisions based upon, what are the chances? And the release rate was really high, and people would end up being in an academy till they're kind of 16, and then just before their 16th birthday released, and then their life's over and the world's ending. And I thought, do you know what? I really enjoy it. I've gone from 3 sports that I hate, playing them, regardless of how good I was or not. By the way, awful at hockey. Put me in goal there as well, actually. But then it's kind of like I don't want to do that with football. I don't want to ruin the love. So I just always wanted to play with my friends and stay at the kind of level that I was at. So I never really took any of the opportunities that were in front of me. And you'd think that, with my dad and the connections that he had in professional football and the improvement that I made, that I could have probably tried a bit harder or taken some of those opportunities. But, I was a kid and I was enjoying myself, and I look back now and I don't really have any regrets. But there's kind of what ifs, but not regrets. So I ended up playing semi-pro football, and a few of my friends played that level as well. And I took it more seriously the older that I got, and ended up running a Sunday league side called Gym United, as well as playing semi-pro on a Saturday. And that ended up, like with anything that I do, becoming a bit of an obsession. So we didn't just want to create a Sunday side. We wanted to break all of the records of that Sunday league. We wanted to do more than anyone had ever done. And then we wanted to win the National FA Cup on a Sunday as well. And it took us 8 years to get to the final of that competition, but we got all the way to the final.
Oh, wow.
At Sheffield United, and we played some incredible sides. And ironically, because people slag off Sunday football, but at a certain level, it's actually a very, very high standard. And that competition, we beat teams on a Sunday that were better than teams that we were playing on a Saturday.
Right.
It was just amazing. But a lot of it was to do with team spirit. And because that was like a group of brothers, really, that football club, you would literally die on the football pitch to win a game because you didn't want to let anyone else down. It was kind of everyone was brought into that journey. And I guess that's a really important part of football, that psychological element to it.
Yep.
And if being a United fan, I relate that to the current side.
I was just about to say, as a fellow United fan, it's almost the missing ingredient for United right now is that cohesion. And you watch them and you think they're not playing for each other. They're not brothers. They won't die on the pitch for each other. Yeah. And it's amazing when you do have that. You can have a very, very average side. You do very, very well. Yeah. Not that you was an average side. I'm sure he was a great side.
I thought that's what you were getting.
No. Sorry, poor choice of words. But I'm saying, if you look at other Premier League teams, for example, that might overachieve, and I'd say a huge part of that overachievement will come from the camaraderie, the team bonding, the wanting to die on the pitch for each other. It's a massive part of sport.
Did you, on that note about Sunday football, did you hear in the news about Roberto Carlos?
No.
Did you hear that? He's
about joining a Sunday league?
So Roberto Carlos has put himself up for sale on eBay on Gumtree. And he's put it up to an offer for, it's like a bid, I think, for Sunday league teams to go and potentially buy him for a game, so that basically there'll be a Sunday league team going off and playing, and the pissing down rain, being able to say that they've got the best left back ever.
I read about this online. That's I thought amazing. That can't be true, but I think it actually is true.
I love that.
Is it for charity or is it just to raise money? It must be raising money for something. That's amazing.
It's for charity.
If it's not, he's fallen on hard times.
How the mighty have fallen. Never look back after the free kick against France.
So you mentioned there, Matt, about the kind of the pressure, and this is something that we actually talk about quite a lot when it comes to performance pressure in sport. And it's a fine balance, isn't it? Because we need that, don't we? We obviously need that pressure to perform. When we talk about, so for example, like Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, it's came out now that all his teammates basically hated him because he was so hard on them, right? But they also came out and said they would never be the athletes. They would never be, like the Scottie Pippens. They would never be the second or third best basketballers ever if it wasn't for him. My only concern is the age and the level that this then starts to creep into sport, whether it's grassroots or, you know, from early doors. So I guess the question would be, how important is pressure for you in order to perform? But also, what's your opinion on sort of that level of pressure that comes into sport and the age that it does, you know, when it comes from like the parents and the clubs, because that's going to be one of the reasons that, you know, actually increases performance anxiety as opposed to getting rid of it. And a lot of people will drop off from an earlier age.
It's a good question. I think the problem with the answer is that, like with anything in life, you can't put a blanket approach on this. So everyone's different. And one of the major skills in business, in football, is understanding how to motivate and what's going to get a reaction out of your staff or your players or your team. And one of the best of all time is Alex Ferguson, right? So with this side of the table, we're definitely going to agree on that. I'm not sure about that side. But
Ben's an Aberdeen fan, it's fine.
Yeah, right.
a lot of people would have Alex Ferguson as the best manager coach of all time. But tactically, I would probably say, having not been in the dressing rooms, that if you look at Mourinho, Pep, they're above Ferguson tactically, because they're geniuses at what they do and the attention to detail is incredible. But coaching and management is about a lot more than tactics. It's about what you can get out of what you've got in your dressing room. And leading is a massive part of that. And there were a couple of people in that dressing room for a long period of that time that could get the most out of every single player. And Alex Ferguson, I think, would know who to put an arm round. And who to kick a boot at. And you might not always get it right, but 99% of the time he did that. And then his lieutenant was Roy Keane, who, going back to your Michael Jordan analogy, he would have demanded the best out of every single person in that dressing room, and not always probably in the right way or a way that is going to make people love him. But it will always make people respect him. And most of the time, it will get the most out of that player or that team. Because the other thing that goes through your mind in those split-second decisions is not just, can I be asked to track that man? It's, what's going to happen if I don't? And there's a consequence to that. And it's either being called out or, I can swear on this, right?
Yes.
Or pinned up against the wall in the dressing room. I'm not saying that that's right, but knowing what person to do that to and what person to put an arm around. So Darren Fletcher's got a famous quote that came off the back of Roy Keane's exodus from Man United, which was, he was absolutely amazing for me, because you highlight, he's lost it, he's had a go at this person, he's throttled that person, he's threatened this person. But if you add up all the moments in a day, you consider how many hours they spent training, playing in a group together. He said 99 times out of 100, he'd be having his arm around me, telling me, look, you could do this better, you could do that better, this is brilliant, you're amazing at this. So 99% of it was positive. But yeah, of course, every so often, he's going to go in on you. And that kept him on his toes and wanting to, because you almost crave the compliments from Keane or Ferguson at that point. So it wasn't all bollockings and attacks. It was the right balance.
Yeah,
I think the media want to have this reputation of this snarling, crazy Irishman. you can see even now that he's got a great personality. He's got a great sense of humour. There's more to him than just the psycho. And I've been portrayed that way, even our little level before, because I'm short-tempered and I'm very animated on the football pitch, and particularly with opponents and if people aren't pulling their weight. But that's 90 minutes on a football game in a competitive environment. But I'm not like that in the dressing room or in the bar, or none of you guys have ever seen that side of me.
Trying to think of times when I've seen this. I've seen this version of Matt Morton.
I've seen the Insta stories are bad enough. So those skills that you've learned from sport, those skills that you've learned, what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat it as sport, but I'm also maybe going to treat this as exercise and physical activity in general. Would you say that those skills that you've learned in that environment is why that you've got to where you are from a business standpoint as well, from a career standpoint outside of sport?
Yeah, definitely. I think that sport and how I've approached it and the influences on my life, either consciously or subconsciously, have definitely affected my business life as well, without a shadow of a doubt. So I don't think you can help but be influenced by people like that, whether it's just from an observational perspective or people directly in your life. So my dad's had a massive influence on my personality, and so has my mum. Some nature and some nurture. So I mentioned earlier that my mum is a very short-tempered, lovely woman, by the way, but she has her moments. And she was very, very much stick growing up. And if you did something wrong, I'd been chased around the house, I was chased around the garden. in front of a gardener with a ruler because I didn't eat my breakfast, and like this type of stuff was my upbringing. But at the same time, she was very protective. She was like a lioness, and you knew she had your back. But you want to be careful, because if you don't toe the line or do the things that you're told to do, there's a respect level there as well.
Yeah.
Whereas my dad was so easygoing, and he's the type of guy that your mum said you can't have sweets, and yes, your mother's right, you can't have sweets, and then in the hall slip you some sweets and don't tell your mum, behave yourself. But he was a very, very dedicated, focused, hardworking businessman, and as well as being a referee, I've never met anyone that works harder, but with the right balance. So he always had time for the family. He always made sure that the family came first. But he came from a very poor background. So he was brought up in Wisbech in the Fenlands, but he moved there very early. He was born in Newcastle, moved down, and his dad was in the army. His mum was a secretary and a journalist, but on very low incomes. So he decided that he wanted to make a life for his family that was different to the one that he had growing up, if he could. Yeah. So he went to London, and he spent 26, 27 years commuting from where we were every morning and coming home every evening, but he didn't want to raise a family in London. So we were in Bury St Edmunds, which was for him probably a 90-minute door-to-door journey every morning and a 90-minute journey back every evening, because he wanted to make sure he was back for dinner time, put the kids to bed. He wanted us to grow up in a kind of rural-ish, suburby environment, and go to good schools. So he wanted to earn a certain amount of money. He wanted to take us on nice holidays. He wanted us to live in a nice house. So all those things that he didn't have, but we were never spoiled. So some things I never had as a child are quite important to me now. They shouldn't be, but honestly they are. So nice clothes, designer labels, all of that type of stuff. I just like that, because being able to do that makes me feel good, and I like to look good. But growing up, I never had any of that. We could have afforded it. He could have easily done that. We also never got driven around in Lamborghinis. It was nice cars. He could have afforded those, but it was always Mercedes, and because he wanted to keep us grounded, and he wanted to make sure that we had the same desire that he had to be successful in our own right. Yeah. So we've never had big sums of money given to us. We've never had deposits for houses. We've all had to do everything on our own, and all three of us, to be fair, have actually gone and done that. But I don't think we would have done had we not have had that start in life and that grounding from him. And also, from my mum's perspective, showing, because her background was even worse than his. She grew up in IRA times in Northern Ireland and came over here at 18. But before that, it was kind of check under your hood in the car, before you turn the engine on and all of that type of stuff in Northern Ireland. And you hear these stories, and her whole family ended up coming over, and she's one of 7, 2 brothers, 5 sisters, I think. And it's a big family. Irish, short-tempered, working class, but
it's like the 3rd or 4th time mentioned.
There'll be more. It's because if I say it about her, then I can feel better about my short temper. It's all her fault. Yeah. But I think the combination. If you had 2 of my mum in the same house, my dad was the same, it wouldn't have worked so well. If you had 2 of my dad, maybe not so well either. But that combination, I think, gave us, I like to think, the best of both worlds in terms of the balance. Yeah. So you know how to stick up for yourself and what's right and wrong, but at the same time you've got compassion and empathy, and you can understand why you would do things for other people. So all 3 of us have always been very compassionate, very empathetic, and always looking to see what good you can do, regardless of how successful you are or are not. So yeah.
That's fascinating. Just bringing it back to your parents again, and kind of your childhood as well, because obviously as you've spoken, your parents have massively influenced and shaped who you are. I was interested when you kind of spoke about your childhood and playing football, and then the point where you decided, I don't want to ruin this sport kind of thing. Just want to bring it back to that a sec, because I think it's really, really, I find it fascinating. And I was interested to know, kind of, did your parents kind of influence that decision to step back from it, or to keep pushing with football, or was it anything, did anything kind of make you think, I need to keep playing because my dad's heavily into football, or was it very much your own decision to kind of, the course you took, was that kind of your decision, or was it more influenced by your parents, is kind of what I'm getting at?
It's an interesting question, because I look back at it now, and I can't think of any time that there was any pressure from my parents in anything in sport. It was always, do what you want to do what you enjoy. Even the decision to, I don't want to play rugby anymore. Like, a lot of parents would be like, you play for the East of England, you're only 14. Yeah. Why are you giving that up? You're crazy, you're going to keep doing it, you're going to keep doing it. Never. It was like, okay, if you don't want to play rugby, don't play rugby. but that school does rugby. Oh, I want to leave the school then. Okay, let's go to this school. You can play football, no problem.
Yeah.
And even with his background in football, he was never on the sideline shouting. Like me, if I had a child, I don't, but if I had a child, I would have to try my hardest to be on the sideline like this.
I think I'd be quite similar as well.
You can imagine it, can't you?
Yeah.
Because A, you're passionate, and B, you want your kid to be the best that they can be. But sometimes you have to let them feel free to make those mistakes and not feel that you're doing or they're doing something because of you.
Yeah.
And if I was hollering on the sideline at my kid, they would probably think, God, he really wants me to be good. I've got to be good. I've got to be good. But the more important thing is, do they want to be good? So he had this great balance of, and my mum never came to games because the irony, this is the fourth time I mentioned about her temper, the irony is that she was actually a bit ashamed of when I was growing up, my temper on the football pitch, because it was a lot worse. And it wouldn't take much, like an opponent did something to one of my teammates and I'd lose it. And she didn't want to see that. Because at the same time, she's also a good Christian lady. So she doesn't want to see any of that. No, my children shouldn't be fighting and screaming. That's for me. Whereas my dad, he would rather come and watch it, observe it, and then lecture me about it afterwards and tell me why I shouldn't do it. And why the ref was right, because of course they always are, right?
Was he a ref at the time?
He was
as
a
well,
ref at
all
the time.
while she was playing football.
Yeah. So the good thing is he used to ref mainly midweeks and Saturdays, and at youth level our games were always on a Sunday. So he could do all of it. So it was another day for him to get out of the house, which infuriated my mum, but he loved it. And, it's the kid. I've got to support the kid. So he was secretly absolutely buzzing that I chose football because he doesn't really watch all the other sports too much anyway. So football's his thing. So when I decided to do that, he was like, whatever you want, son. And then he got to come all the time. But there was never any pressure. But I did hide something from him when I was young. So when Ipswich wrote from the academy, they sent a letter, and they sent letters to the house addressed to me. And I opened it. I didn't really get much post at that age. And it was from a guy called Malcolm, can't remember his name, Malcolm something, from Ipswich Town Academy, inviting me to go down. They've watched a few of my games, and they were interested in me signing for the academy. And I hid it from him. So I declined, tore it up, got rid of the letter, and never told him.
Oh, wow.
Until later in life. And the reason was because although he never pressured me, I think he would have been disappointed had I not have pursued that if he knew about it. So I thought he's better just not knowing because I don't want to do it.
Do you still believe that would have been the case like today, or
No.
do you think retrospectively?
No, I think it'd have been fine.
Yeah.
But at the time,
you was a bit
I
worried.
thought, this might change things a little bit actually.
Yeah.
So
It's just, wow.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Just looking for that. I suppose, but that's what you do at that age, isn't it? So
How old was you when that happened? Sorry,
15.
15.
It's quite a bold decision though. Like, not as in like to say it's not normal. Like, it totally is. I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of people might have not. I mean, it depends whether you look at it as headstrong or reckless, but I don't think a lot of people maybe would have actually maybe had the awareness or the emotional intelligence to make such a big decision. They probably would have just jumped at it.
Yeah.
Because like we even learn that in like business, you know, like sometimes I'm like, right, yeah, let's go first thing. And Ben's like, right, come on,
Put the
calm
brakes
down.
on, calm down.
But I think that's actually incredible, like at that age, to actually be really making your own decision and not just jumping at it and having other people influence it for you.
I've always had this thing, again, and I'm sure it's influenced by my parents again, but I've always had this idea of what I wanted to do, even if that's changed, and it obviously hasn't a number of times. But at that time, I've always been clear in my mind, and I've always stuck to that, and very rarely have I been swayed, even if I talk about it. So I knew at the time, I'm not going to do this. Regardless of what anyone says, I'm not going to do it because I didn't want to do it. I wanted to play with my friends. I didn't want to be taken from an environment that I enjoyed, around the people that I cared about, to then go to Ipswich and potentially get released in a year anyway with people that I didn't know. And I also, believe it or not, I was quite different then to how I am now. As a kid, I probably wasn't, I was very outgoing when I knew people. I was exactly as I am now in a room full of people that I know. But in environments where I didn't know people, I wasn't the same person. It would take me a bit of time. So I'd be a bit more closed off and observe a little bit before I came out of my shell. And you go from being the quietest in the room to then, after you know everyone, the loudest in the room. And that was always my thing, one to the other. Whereas now, I just go straight in and...
I've arrived.
Yeah. So I think that probably was part of it as well, because I didn't want to almost start again. Oh, I'm going to make new friends and then be the quietest and then the loudest. And then, am I going to like it? Are they going to like me? And there's probably an element of that looking back in it as well. That wasn't in my thought process at the time, but now looking back, I think it probably was influenced by that because I was comfortable there. I was happy there.
Yeah.
And if you also think, I'm actually now thinking while we're talking about it, going back to the point about I was really, really shit at under 10s. And then within a year, I'd got myself from being the worst player to the best player. Did I then want to go from being the best, the big fish in the small pond now, to the professional pond and be maybe the worst again?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
then all
that-
the pressure that brings with it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's me thinking now, 20 years later, was that the case? It probably was something to do with it, even though that wasn't a conscious thought process at the time.
Wow.
When getting on to you in personal life a little bit then, Matt. So obviously, I touched on at the start there, and me and you have chatted about this as well, one-to-one as well, that the fact that, there's only 8 or 9 footballers in the world, one recently, actually, to add to that list, who have openly came out as gay, it's almost...
It's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
ridiculous that this conversation is having to take place, but it's incredibly important that it's going to take place, and it's amazing that you've every single thing that you do to campaign for this equality. And going back to the start, I guess, tell us a little bit about when you first released this information, some of the thoughts that were going through your head, this internal battle that was going on, the internal narrative. Tell us a little bit about that, because I'd really love to get into that and just really sort of talk about like the stereotypes and the discrimination, everything that goes hand in hand with it as well.
Well, I can talk. How far back do you want me to go in this journey? Because there's a backstory to it.
Let's have the backstory. I mean,
Okay,
I know.
I'll sit back a little bit then and get comfortable.
I think it's important to get some context here, because I'd really like to delve into talking about identity and that type of stuff as well afterwards. So let's just.
So I have a very, very strange, unique story when it comes to this, because a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people either know from as long as they can remember that they're gay and then accept it, embrace it, and they're out forever almost. The majority in men realise early, hide it, deny it, suppress it, and then eventually come out. Another group realise, hide it forever. And then you have people like me who, and again, I've not heard anyone else with this story, but I'm sure I'm not completely unique, don't realise until very, very later in life. I say very, very late, I was 30. But I didn't realise. Now, I always knew that kind of relationships weren't really for me, but I didn't know why. So I spent a lot of my youth, I don't know if successful is the right word, but being relatively successful at pulling, but not particularly knowing why I was doing it, because it wasn't something, a lot of my friends, now I understand, by the way, which I'll get onto, but a lot of my friends were, you go out on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday back then, obviously the legal age, definitely not from 16. And
I'm just shocked you said Thursday, Friday and Saturday. How did you manage that?
Well, do you know,
I could not do that.
how old are you now?
24.
Exactly. So I'm 35. I can't even manage a Saturday now. Only 3 weeks off. But back then it was constant. And all of my mates, not all of them, that's a bit harsh, but most of my mates were kind of, lads. And the number one goal was pulling someone. I'm going to get hold of someone tonight. And it's just like, I mean, I even look back on that language now and I think, oh God. But for me, it was like, can't we just have a good time, play a bit of pool, dance, get a bit pissed, have a bit of banter? Like, if it happens, it happens. That was my attitude. And sober, I was never really bothered. And then as you get more and more drunk, and then you're on a dance floor and something happens, that would happen. But then I would always panic. Like the next day, it was, oh God, someone's in my bed, or I'm in theirs, or it's like, I've got to get out here, or they've got to get out here. And that sounds awful. And I didn't necessarily know why, because I wasn't, that stereotype of a player or someone that just wanted to have a shag and then move on. And it was just something that happened and by the way, it wasn't every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I wasn't a whore, but every
that's why he said successful.
Every Sunday too.
It was every so often. It was more than it probably should have been, knowing that I was gay now. But it was just not something that I was really that motivated for. So it was take it or leave it. Now, I wasn't like repulsed by it or anything like that. Like, you talk to some gay men now and it's like, oh God, how did you do it? Like, well, it was just what I did. But now I look back knowing what I know, and I think that's the reason. But at the time there was every other excuse. It was just like, oh no, it's just because I'm so busy with work and friends and football and family, and I just can't fit a girlfriend in, and that's why I'm not a commitment person. But if you look at every other aspect of my life, work, friends, family, you couldn't be more committed. Like, it was the level of passion and affection and desire and aptitude, all of that was just to the extreme. As I've said before, I can become very focused on the things that I care about and dismiss anything else. But in that area, which for a lot of people was kind of the number one goal, meet someone, fall in love, get married, have kids, etc. For me, it was just like, oh God, all of that's just like, nah, not at all. And I always put it down to being more committed to the other things and not having time. But looking back, that was an excuse. Yeah. Now, I don't know, and I'm now in the mindset that it was just subconsciously buried within me, because I'm a firm believer that you don't become gay. It's genetic, it's chemical. You either are or you aren't. So I was all of those years, and I have been all my life. But talking about those influences in your life, my environment was never one that would have made you accept or be conscious that you were gay, because I had an old school upbringing. My dad is very old school in that way, in that sense. It's not something that he's ever been around. My mum, Christian, very religious, and it's always been wrong and against God's law and, everything else. So that, combined with homophobia that happens on telly, in the media, or in football, which was my big thing, it was just something that I think I experienced all of that and didn't allow myself to then think about the real reason why I wasn't embracing women at that time, why I didn't want to have a relationship, why I didn't commit to anybody, why I wasn't bothered about pudding, why it would just happen when I was drunk and then I'd panic afterwards about it becoming something more serious. But now you look back at all of that and you think, well, that's definitely why. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because there are so many people that either won't realise or won't allow themselves to realise, like me, because of all of their environment, or worse. And I've had thousands and thousands of messages and conversations with people in the last 18 months or so since I came out publicly, because people struggle with this. People that have known, I've had people say, I've known since I was a kid, but I don't dare tell anyone. And they're like 30 now. And you're like, I can't imagine that.
Must be crippling.
What I can say, if I had have realised, if I was conscious of this at any age, I would have come out. I'm actually quite glad that I didn't, and I'll explain why in a second. But if I was, I would have come out, because that's just my character. I'm not scared of stuff. I don't hide stuff. I don't sugarcoat stuff. Like me, hate me, whatever. But this is me. And if you're going to hate me, it's going to be because you're hating the real me, not because there's a version of me that I'm presenting that you don't like. And that's why I've done what I've done now. Now, it did take me 18 months before coming out from when I realised. But I think that was because my personality was already established. My friendship group was very established. My career was established. My football was established. Everybody who knew me. And I thought, shit, this is a lot for me to get my head around, let alone anybody else. And then the stereotypes come in. You think, oh, am I? Because even it's just like, well, you had a stereotype in your mind of what a gay man was. Slightly flamboyant, feminine maybe, weaker, all completely wrong. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, hang on a minute, I can bench quite a lot. I'm pretty competitive. I'm pretty stereotype. Yeah, exactly. No, definitely not gay. No, I'm competitive. I am the Roy Keane of our football team. Well, he can't be gay, can he? No chance. No. So you process that in your head, and then you think, what's everyone else going to think? And the reaction that I got when I came out reinforced how bad these stereotypes are, because a lot of people were very surprised. Only a handful of people I did suspect. And they were like cousins, and their logic was, you never brought a girl back to the family. You never really brought girls to big family events or weddings or whatever else. You always kind of came on your own or with a friend or whatever. And that was their reason for thinking, well, there's got to be some reason here. So I said, I wish you could have told me 10 years ago. Made my life a lot easier. But a lot of other people who maybe know me more through football or through business or whatever, I was like, really? Wow. Oh, I wouldn't have thought that. And some of the comments around why they were surprised with, oh, yeah, but you don't come across gay. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, what is
it?
Yeah. I'm honestly, I'm fascinated by this subject because me and Ben have chatted about this quite a lot. And when, just to relate slightly to you, when I was growing up, Ben knows a lot more about this than you. When I was growing up, it was a similar type thing, you know, out every single weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, maybe a Sunday as well. That was a similar type thing. And I know the reason that I was doing that was because I've always acted a little bit feminine. I was very, you know, skinny. All my mates were like a wee bit bigger. And when I grew up, I had a little bit of like a posher accent at my school because of my parents. So then
so you weren't Scottish then?
So, well, I'm born in Scotland.
Another story.
Born in Scotland. My dad was born in Newcastle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mum was born in Mississippi. My brother was born in Zimbabwe, but we don't have time for that just now. So I was so probably insecure about myself and unaware of my own identity that at school, because I spoke posher than everyone else, I put on a posh accent at school and spoke like that for about 5 years, more than 5 years, because I was so scared of being slagged or picked on. I thought, well, I'm going to be a joke. I'll make a laugh and I'll kind of play on this a little bit. And so when I was then going like through my teens and then through my early 20s as well, it was a very, very similar thing. And then I looked back on it afterwards. I was like, well, why was I doing it? And it was just to prove a point. But the point I want to make on that is like what you said, what does it mean to be gay? How does it even come across? Because I've even had to have conversations with Amy, my partner, when we first got together and just say, by the way, like I act a bit feminine. Like I can act a bit camp sometimes. I'm not gay, by the way, but just to let you know. And I feel as if that is something that no one should ever have to justify. Yes, we should never have to say that, because sometimes I will act like that in that scenario. Does that mean I'm gay? No. I'm just me. Do you know what I mean? And I feel as if like that can then lead to a lot of confusion with people as well. For me, it's something that I've never actually, questioned like deeper. I've also been very confident and aware of my sexuality, of being straight. But then it does make you think then, well, why do I act like this? I was like, because you're just a unique person. You're a unique human being. And that sexuality, I feel as if shouldn't always get brought into this. I think that can lead to young people getting confused, even more.
It's a real problem. And one of the things it stems back to is everyone wants to put people in a box that psychologically fits for them. Yeah. So, what are you? And where are you from? And what sex are you? What sexuality are you? What type of person are you? And the little triggers for that, like, so I've just talked about some of the comments that I had about why people were surprised. But then I've had people that said that they were surprised. Then a few weeks later say to me, been thinking I should have known because, and by the way, for context, before I tell you what they said, you're not the only one that's been a fitness model. Back in the day.
Here we go.
This is the competitive side of
that. Back in the day. Yeah, I used to be just as handsome as Danny. Back in the day, I used to do some fitness modelling. And in those times, you used to shave your legs and all sorts. And I was on exhibition stands and whatever else. So I got into the habit because you've probably never done it. However, although it's me stereotyping, you might have done. If you do it and then you don't do it and then you do it and then you don't do it, you can get skin bumps and all of this type of stuff because your legs aren't used to it. So I just used to always do it because even if I was only going to do 2 or 3 shoots a year, I didn't want to then just shave just for that and then have that problem. So I just went through a 10-year period. I'd just always shave my legs regularly. And you get a better tan on holiday.
No, you do. I can vouch for it. I shave my legs. I've been doing it for about 5 years.
See, fitness models. But this person said to, and it always stick with me, this person said to me a few weeks after they said how surprised they were because I alpha male, rah, 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 which of course you can't be gay if you are, then said, I should have known. I should have known. You shave your legs.
Shave your legs.
Oh my God. Wow.
And I looked at them and I was just like, yeah. yeah, I'll mention his name because no one knows his surname. Yeah, Rob. Yeah, because that is a definite gay sign, isn't it? That's one of the first ones on the list. And he was just like, yeah.
That's when you realised.
Exactly.
That's when you realised, shaved your
but little things like that, it's funny. We laugh about it. But
I was just about to say we can laugh about it, but actually, when you deep it, it's a real issue, isn't it?
It is.
That people can think, oh, I should have known because of a physical behaviour you displayed once.
Yeah.
Can have some kind of relationship with your sexuality. It's not related at all.
Exactly. And I know times change and it's different for different people, but some other people have said things like, oh, yeah, you are very vain and you've always cared about how you look. Oh, so anyone that cares about how they look must be gay, not just insecure or putting on a front or just has pride in their appearance or wants to dress a certain way for a certain event or character type or whatever. None of those things, just because, if you're a man and you care about how you look, you must be gay, or at least on that scale. Well, everyone's on the scale, by the way, just so everyone knows. This is, again, opinion, but I had this conversation with my assistant manager recently. So John Taylor, Cambridge United, ex-pro, is still their all-time top goal scorer. Played up front with Dion Dublin before Dion got his move to Man United. Oh, wow. He's my assistant manager now at Thetford. Unbelievable coach, great guy, but very, very old school. So all of this is quite... By the way, he's very embracing of it all, but he wants to learn. And he's this type of character. So
it's a bit of maybe a generational thing, but he's wanting to,
Exactly. Sure. So he asks me loads of questions all the time, and like he'll think of something, he'll be like, question for you. And he'll always start with, don't take any offence to this, but go on, John.
So when you shave your legs,
what cream do you use?
he said to me, and I'm going to take it as a compliment, I'm definitely repeating it because it is one. So he said to me, look, I look at some people and I think some people stand out as having something a bit different about them or being very attractive, or when they walk into a room you kind of notice and they've got a presence about them. And by the way, these are his words, not mine. But he said, like, people like you, David Beckham. I'm like, well, yeah, we're very similar. very, very, very similar. But yeah, he said that, so if I look at you and think, they're good looking, what does that mean? Because I'm definitely not gay. And I said, it's all right, you don't need to prove yourself to me. But, what does that mean? I said, well, look, in my opinion, it's like anything. There is a spectrum, and it can go from 0 to 100. But most people are somewhere between 1 and 99. So if you take me, for example, I've slept with girls, I've been with girls, and I wasn't repulsed by it. So I very much doubt I'm 100% over here. But what I do know is that I'm much more attracted to the guys that I've been with than the girls that I was with, and therefore I am gay, not bi. Because I could be with a girl, but it would be a bit forced and I wouldn't really want to be, and it's not the same feeling. But I'm not repulsed by it. Whereas I know a lot of gay guys that are like, oh, God, no, definitely not. So they are much further up that end here. And I know guys that are like repulsed by the fact that they'd be with a guy, but might think a guy's good looking. Well, even if you think a guy's good looking, you can acknowledge someone being attractive, right? And that's where he was. So he might be 1%, he's 99% straight, and then that 1% can acknowledge that someone's good looking. And then you get people that will refuse to even acknowledge someone's good looking because it might mean that someone might suspect that they go, no, everyone's ugly. Yeah, everyone's ugly, and I am not gay. But it's bollocks. Now, you can be on that spectrum somewhere and be straight or gay, but not want to be with someone of the other sex. So I think that the more people kind of understand that, and it's the same with a lot of social diseases as well. So autism, there's a spectrum as well. It's you're not 100% autistic or not at all. There can be parts to that where you've got certain tendencies or you've got certain things that make you anxious or uncomfortable or awkward. And I think that the more education there is around all of these subjects for people, whether it's sexuality, gender, race, social diseases, whatever it is, that people need to have a greater understanding so that there's less judgment and criticism, and because there's awkwardness the other way. People can be normal people, I say normal people, even that's offensive, but can be awkward around autistic people because they don't know how to handle that. But if they were aware of what that meant and how to make somebody more comfortable or make yourself more comfortable, then you would normally be more comfortable as well. So I think that education is a massive part. And you mentioned before, 8 or 9 people are openly gay in football. I mean, the situation for me was really alarming when I first came out. And Sky Sports, there's a guy who's a friend of mine now, a guy called John Holmes, and he's one of the senior editors at Sky Sports. And he read my story. I don't know how he got hold of it, but it was in local media when I first came out. Because as soon as I made that decision, I got contacted by, put it on Instagram, got contacted by local media. They want to do an interview. And then John happened to come across it, phone me and say, listen, I'm from Sky Sports. Would you be prepared to go national? So, don't see why not, but why is it national news?
Yeah.
And he explained, I was and still am, the highest level playing football player openly gay in the UK. Wow. And I am 8 tiers down from the Premier League.
Wow.
Jesus.
So I play step 5. It would take 8 promotions for us to get to the Premier League. Now I'll be dead by then, let alone playing. And I am the highest player in this country, the home of football, to be openly gay and actively playing. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
And it's not because nobody else is gay. It's because of the consequences that those players feel are there by coming out. So they're all hiding that. And they're hiding it from their teammates. They're hiding that from their families, probably, their friends, the fans, opponents, media. And they're doing it for a reason. I'm not saying they're wrong to do it. Everyone has to make their own decision. But what I'm striving for is that we can collectively create an environment where they don't feel that they have to do that, where their choice becomes less of a hard decision and they can embrace that. And there's so many things that go on. Obviously, there's so many factors. Opposition fans. I was worried about that to a point. Not because I'm bothered about what they think. They call me anything anyway. I've been called all sorts by opponents and fans. But it was something that I thought, will they use that to get me sent off because I am a target for that? I've always been a target for that. And I've got better as I've got older. But the irony is, and you can only talk about your own experience. Before I came out, I was called gay and had abusive things from opponents and opponent fans. So I haven't always had blonde hair, but if I've dyed my hair before, I'll use them on here, but obviously this is just for context. But you faggot, you puff, oh, gay boy, rah, rah, rah. Even because they thought I wasn't, but they thought it would wind me up and get under my skin because I care about how I look, or I've done my hair, or I've got tattoos, or whatever else. And I used to have a lot of sunbeds, so whenever, and I don't now for health reasons, but because I always had a tan, people would then assume, oh, you're gay because you have sunbeds. So you get abused for that anyway. Since I came out, no opponent and no opponent fan has ever said anything about sexuality.
Wow.
Ever.
Wow.
Because they're conscious of it now. Because they know, whilst it's semi-pro, it's in our league, people know players, especially when you've been in that league a while. So before, when they didn't think I was, they'd abuse me homophobically to gain an advantage, to get me sent off, to get a reaction, and then have their team have 11v10. Or to throw me off my game, either way. Now, whilst I might get called a see you next Tuesday or a wanker or whatever else, no one's called me gay, puff, faggot, bender, any of that stuff. And I don't know whether it's because, it could be 2 reasons, right? It could be because, oh shit, he actually is and he will go mad if I do. Or...
he'll do a decanio.
Yeah, exactly. Or a Cantona.
Cantona, sorry, yeah, decanio, yeah.
But I think it's actually because there was a risk of that anyway, right? It's actually because they're not bad people generally, and they realise that's very wrong, and you'll look an absolute arsehole if you do that. It's like being racist, right? If someone came and racially abused you on a football pitch, I very much doubt even their own teammates will stand by them. They'll be like, what the fuck are you doing, you dickhead? You're the arsehole.
It's almost always like a small section of a fan that's in the corner somewhere that thinks they can get away with it.
Yeah.
People won't openly abuse, publicly like that, generally, because people are going to think, well, what a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't really happen like that.
Exactly.
Just touching on what you said a second ago about the kind of consequences, and obviously you're talking about the fear of people potentially, opponents abusing you in the game, and then when it came to the reality of it, it actually didn't happen. How real are some of the consequences that you think footballers are facing when coming out as gay? So obviously, you're the 8th league down. There's plenty more gay footballers out there, most probably in the Premier League. in the highest division that aren't publicly gay, sorry. How kind of real are some of the consequences that they're facing, and what are the barriers that you think they're kind of going through mentally that's stopping them being public about it?
First of all, you notice you said before how we're all friends, and he just took that dig yet that 8th tier down. Honestly, who needs enemies?
Sorry, I didn't.
Not
sounded
sex.
really harsh.
Outrageous. Yeah, there are a lot of better gay footballers than you really know.
That's not how I
Just don't know it.
No, I'm kidding. I think that it depends, because you make a good point that the higher you go, all of that's amplified. No pun intended. So if you're a Premier League player, and there will be gay players in the Premier League that clearly aren't comfortable telling anyone, if at my level there's 500 people in a football stadium and a couple of them decide to be homophobic or racist, you know who they are, because there's only 500 people and they're all spread around the ground. They're probably standing up, and there's going to have someone either side
More of a
them.
community, they probably
It's
know
more
each
of a
other as well.
community.
Yeah.
If you've got 30, 50, 80,000 people, you can be hidden. And it's less likely that someone's going to either call you out or that they'll spot you anyway. I mean, we've all been at big football grounds where you've heard something and you thought, I said that, but you can't really, unless they carry on while you're watching, they can't really see. So I think that because football fans feel they can hide in bigger stadiums, a bit like people on Twitter and social media now, you hide behind a keyboard and you can hide your identity and you can say whatever you want, whether you think it, mean it or not. And I think that's a little bit like that, but to a lesser degree in a big environment in a football stadium. So I think the fear that people have of opposition fans abusing them if they came out is greater than it is even at my level, definitely. I've always argued, though, if it does happen in a bigger ground, it's less likely to affect you. Because if it happens in my ground, I probably know who said it. So I'm either going to be looking for you or having an exchange with you, or the crowd's going to kick off. But I know where it's come from, and it's probably someone that I know, unless it's an opposition fan, but it's more personal. So to me, that would be worse than if one person, two people say it in amongst 40,000 people, and I might not be able to hear them over the other chants anyway. So there's a definite real concern for people. I'm not taking that away, but they're going to abuse you for something anyway.
Yeah, very true.
And I mean, Wayne Rooney spent 10 years getting called fat by opposition fans. Every game,
And
fat, granny, shagger, everything else. I mean, one of them was true. He was never fat, but he was a great athlete. But people are still going to say things, whether they're true or whether they're not. I mean, you really look at Wayne Rooney and, you know, as a gay man, he's not the most attractive person in the world for me, but he's not fat. He was an elite level athlete. He was quick, he was strong, he was one of the most incredible strikers that the Premier League's seen, yet people are still probably 3 times his body fat percentage, if not more, from a stand calling him fat.
Yeah.
So it's just irony. So you if you're in that environment anyway, you are going to get abuse at some point, especially if you're good. The better you are, the more likely that an opposition fan's going to call you something or say something. So it could be for anything. If it's not because of your sexuality, they're probably going to say something about your mum, your sister, your wife, your brother, your whatever. I mean, even if you're not gay, you're going to get gay abuse. What was the Liverpool-Norwich game? Where they were
Billy Gilmore, wasn't it?
Billy Gilmore,
Yeah.
and they were singing about him being a rent boy. So you're going to get it anyway. So for me, I would look at that as an opportunity rather than a problem. And it's going to take a certain personality type. It's going to be from a leader. It's going to be from someone that wants to make a difference. So, you know, a Jordan Henderson, a Roy Keane, a Wayne Rooney, someone like that who their shoulders are broad enough to almost take something forward and say, do you know what? I'm going to set the trend here, and I don't care. Like Justin Fashanu did it years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was incredibly brave. I mean, he was already in an era where there was a very racist football following in the UK. So he was a black guy growing up in Norwich, which at the time was a rarity in itself. And then later, after getting racially abused from the terraces, said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm gay as well. And got that too. Yeah. But I think I would bet somewhere in that philosophy was, well, they're already abusing me. So if it's not for the colour of my skin, it might as well be for my sexuality. And he was incredibly brave, but he was the only one. I think now we're in a very different environment. It's much more accepting, and you'll get much more support. Back then, I don't think many people would have stuck up for him against a racist or homophobic mob. I think that the good guys tend to stay quiet. Now we've got more of an activist community, I think. So actually the bad guys, and you look at social media, there's always comments and racists and homophobes and whatever. But for every one of them, there's 10, 20 people that come on and say, you're evil, you're wrong, you're ignorant, you're stupid. And they're on them. And I think now that's the same in a public environment. So now is a much better time than, unfortunately, for Justin, it was back then.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. With on that note as well, so we had a conversation. I think it was quite a few months ago, and I can't. Apologies if I'm saying this wrong, but it was something that Rio Ferdinand had came down, and I think it was his agent or another agent that he knew had basically encouraged another player to cover up coming out as gay. Have I got that right? I think
so. So Rio spoke in Parliament about a historic player.
Yeah, that's
who,
right.
by the way, has subsequently come out. So he was talking about Thomas Hitzlberger.
Right.
And Hitzlberger obviously didn't come out while he was playing in the Premier League, but after he retired, then came out as openly gay. A bit like Thomas Beattie has done, ex-Hull player, but none of them felt comfortable to do it while they were actively playing. They always had a plan to wait until they'd retired, and then they weren't going to be subject to either commercial issues through brands and endorsements, or through the boardroom or the dressing room environment, or the stands. Like Thomas Beattie always spoke about how the dressing room was the one that he feared probably the most, even though he deep down knew everyone would be okay. So there's different reasons. But when Rio was speaking in Parliament, he didn't want to give the name. And if you look at that clip, even though Thomas had already come out, the person didn't know who Rio was talking about. So they're there to talk about discrimination. And as soon as Rio said that he spoke to a player and the player's agent at the time advised him not to come out. Yeah. The guy who is in Parliament didn't want to talk about the subject anymore, was just straight on to who was it? Can you tell us who it was? Now, that's the most irrelevant part of the whole story.
Yeah.
The story is the whole point, not who. He assumed it was a player that we didn't know was gay, so it was going to be another outing, and wanted to get to the who.
Yeah.
But it's not the who, it's the why. But that reaction is exactly the problem with society at the moment, because we're all chasing this Premier League footballer to come out and say they're gay. There's silhouettes on the front of the Sun all the time, and that's encouraged by certain organisations. But what do we lead? What do we gain from that? The whole country guessing, who is it? Who is it? And then speculating, and then players have to put up with, it's him. I've had people mention to me, it was quite funny, I'll tell you this story as well. So everyone assumes gay people have a gaydar. If they do, I don't have it. It doesn't exist. I mean, it took me 31 years to realise I was bloody gay, let alone guessing it.
You did that for it was broken.
It was absolutely broken. Yeah. But we were watching the England, was it the Colombia game? In the Euro. No, it wouldn't have been Colombia, would it? Who were we playing where we won 5-0?
Ukraine.
Was it Ukraine?
Was it in the Euros?
You mean in the World Cup?
Oh, in the Euros.
In the Euros.
In the Euros.
Yeah, it was Ukraine.
Was it? To watch England games.
Let's say it was, because I can't remember, so we'll go with that.
Yeah, it was. We absolutely whitewashed them. We just didn't touch the ball. Yeah,
coming from the Scotland, from the Scottish boy.
You sure you're not English?
Well, we didn't wipe the floor with you, did we? So we were watching that game, and I was in the Goat in Chelsea with a few friends, and everyone's obviously in party mode and a bit relaxed because of the scoreline and how the game was going. And one of my own friends said to me after a couple of drinks, do you think any of them are gay? As in the England players? Oh, I don't know. We're not all like in a WhatsApp group. And he was like, no, but you can tell.
Are you like a whisperer? Like
exactly. Yeah.
One sec. Nope.
I'm getting vibes from him. Yeah.
I should have done something like that. Hold on, let me just.
You should have. Yeah, I should have bladed him for a sec.
He's got shaved legs.
But it's funny because it does come back to these stereotypes. So I said, I don't know why. Because there's two players in that team that I'm convinced are gay, and I just wondered if you thought they were as well, because you'd probably know. So I would probably know. Okay, I probably wouldn't, but all right. I can guess the ones that you're talking about, though. Go on then. And the two players, I got them right. I knew who he was talking about in that team. And it's because of things that have nothing to do with their sexuality. And so, okay, I'll tell you who they are. Raheem Sterling, Phil Foden. Smaller, skinnier, very agile. Raheem runs a bit like this when he runs. I think it's more like a raptor than a homosexual, to be honest.
It is actually. It is.
Two amazing footballers, but because they're not big 7-foot bulky centre halves, and one of them runs like a raptor, he's assuming they're gay, but they're not. They're not comfortable saying anything. Now, if running style can determine sexuality, there's honestly, even at our level, there's a lot more gay people than are letting on. It's ridiculous. But these are the things that we need to change by talking about it, because I'm sure because of that, other people along their careers have questioned them, accused them, thought it about them, but it's ridiculous. I mean, Raheem Sterling has got 3 children. He's quite successful with the ladies himself, and I don't see anything that would lead you to think that he's definitely gay. If he is, by the way, what's it got to do with you? This is the other thing. I don't see why it's a big deal. I get it at the moment because it's rare, but we need to get to a point where we stop searching for the gay player and who is it and are they or I suspect. Why are you even suspecting that? Honestly, as a straight man in a pub on a Saturday night watching England smashing another nation in a tournament that was unbelievable for us, why is the thing that's on your mind, and I know he's a friend of mine, I'm being a bit critical now, but he's a great guy, but why is that on your mind? And it's because we're conditioned to think a certain way about what a gay man is. And by the way, it's the opposite stereotype in the women's game. So I've got some good friends in the women's game as well now, particularly since working at Amplify with a few people. So Leanne Sanderson's one of our stars, and she's an all-star, I guess, of England female football players. She's played for Juventus, Chelsea, Arsenal, and England a lot. Great player in her day, but she was a lesbian, as a lot of female footballers are. However, they feel comfortable in their environment to be themselves, to be their true, authentic selves, because it's more welcoming, it's more open. But they have had the opposite problem to the men's game. Yes. In the men's game, everyone assumes automatically you're straight, unless you say otherwise. And that's because it's a man's game and we're tough and we're men and we're strong, and gay is associated in men as a weakness or feminine or less competitive. In the female game, because again, masculinity, that stereotype is that men is for football and it's a sport, so it's physical and competitive and you have to be strong, and therefore that's a straight man or a gay woman. So if you're a female playing football, you're automatically a lesbian. And I remember this all from school, like people that played football, minority of girls, they would always be rumours, oh, they're lesbian. If there was 2 in the same school, they're together, they're a couple. I mean, it's bollocks. But it's automatic assumptions based on stereotypes, wrong stereotypes, because of what we associate masculinity to be. And you guys are doing a lot of work around mental health, and this is part of that, because until we can fully understand all the shit that we create for people based on how we stereotype, pigeonhole and put people in boxes, we'll never improve. And it is getting better. And my story is a great example of that, because if I came out 20 years ago, I probably would have got a very different reaction to how I've come out now. Now it's 99% positive. It's only the minority. I mean, the Sky Sports piece, I don't know, there's about 150,000 comments through the article, and I think I only saw about 1 or 2 that weren't positive. I did Rio's Vibe with 5 podcast recently with a guy called Luke Tufts, who's now the manager of Leatherhead. And he's the highest level manager now in the country that's openly gay.
How many tiers is he above you?
We won't want to talk about that, Ben. Similar level. But he was on that podcast as well. And you look through the stream of comments there, and considering it's a big platform, there was mostly positive comments and then the odd negative one. So you've got to take it into context. Now, I understand that no one wants negative comments, but at the same time, there's always going to be idiots. And even if we get to 10 years' time when everything's brilliant, that you'll still get the odd idiot, the odd person that has a problem. And genuinely, what you have to look at, this is how I look at it, is their opinions either determined by their religion for whatever reason. I'm not going to make any comments on that, but I do have my own opinions on that subject as well. Or they're very unhappy themselves, and anything that they say about other people is just them projecting and venting. And do you know what? I'm fine with that. I actually feel sorry for you making that comment, because you're clearly not a happy person. If you're scrolling through social media to racially or homophobically abuse people, you ain't exactly happy, are you? You've got either far too much time on your hands, and you need to get your own life. So I can live with that. It's fine. But if 99% of the comments and the feedback is positive or neutral, and by the way, I think it should be neutral. I also don't think I should be praised for being an openly gay man. I just think it should be normal. Yeah. But we need to strive to that. We need to get to that point.
How far away are we from that point, would you say? Is it something that's like generations away, or is it within our grasp in our lifetime, or is it? I know it's a very difficult question, but you said we've definitely got better, and you've managed to see that change throughout your lifetime. Do you think we're like 5-10 years away from it being a normalized conversation?
Yeah,
Premier League football is coming out openly, or do you think it's like 100 years from now?
I think you're closer with 5 to 10 personally. I hope so, but it depends, because there are kind of moments that you can look at as catalysts, right?
Yeah.
And if we were going back 30 years, you would have assumed that Justin doing what he did would then spark a
chain reaction almost.
Exactly, and it didn't. And I think part of that's because the reaction he got, and the world wasn't ready then, and neither was football. And I think football is a reflection of society. So people say, "Oh, football, the bad environment," you know. Football is still a reflection of society, and that's why it's better now than it was then, because the pressure from society makes football improve, makes football get better. Because back then, if you were in the boardroom and you were homophobic, and as the chairman of a football club or the manager of a football club, Brian Clough, he was homophobic, and that's massively changed my opinion of him in the shoes that I'm in now. Because I used to think, you listen to the way Roy Keane, who's my hero, talks about Brian Clough, and you think, what a great manager. But that, for me, that's tarnished because of his personality traits off it. For me, I don't care how amazing you are at your job, whether it be football or business or anything else. If you are racist, I don't have any respect for you.
And it's not just a different opinion, is it? That's someone's whole belief system then. Exactly. It's not like, we disagree on one thing. That's their character, and that is them as a person. I feel so, but
completely agree. But also, like, even if it's we disagree on one thing, for me in my life, there are certain things that if we disagree on them, we're not going to be friends. And one of them is, you're racist, I'm not. Okay, we can agree to disagree. No, we can't, because fundamentally you are a dickhead. I'm sorry, but you either need rehab, education, or you need to be put down, like if the first two don't work, because there's no place for you in modern society if you've got that level of discrimination inside you. It's, for me, it's abhorrent. And generally, I like to think that most people that are racist or homophobic can be educated, because a lot of it will come down to how they feel about themselves and a lack of understanding of how they then make other people feel. And I think if you go through a process and you're willing to embrace that, then that's fine. But there are just some people that are just, unfortunately, evil. And I don't think we'll ever get away from that. And that's why I say that you'll never have 100% of people that aren't racist or aren't homophobic, because there will always be those people. Yeah. But if you look at the percentage now compared to when Justin came out, it's so much smaller. And my case is proof of that. Josh Cavallo, who came out recently, so he's now, the highest playing openly gay footballer in the world, because he's a pro and he plays in the A-League in Australia. I keep telling him that's the equivalent to Step 5 in England. So it's not really any different, Josh. But fair play to him. And he came out because of things that had helped him to do that. So he saw Thomas Beattie's story first. And I think a lot of people will do this. They'll Google, if you're in the closet and you're really upset about your situation, you'll probably look to see, who else has done this and where can I get support from? And he found Thomas's story. And that really helped him. And he actually reached out after a few weeks to Thomas. And Thomas spent 6 months, I believe, kind of counselling him, talking to him, helping him, advising him, introduced him to his manager, who does a lot of good work, a guy called David McFarland in LGBT sports. And those two really helped him. And during that process, he saw my story. And then after he came out, he reached out to me as well. And we talked about how he looked at Thomas's story originally and then my story of inspiration of these people are living the life that I'm living, and they've done this, so I can do that. And that's obviously at a pro level, but there are 20, 30 examples of Josh's story that I've had personally that are in the lower tiers of football. Not even semi-pro, but amateur. There was an 18-year-old that contacted me about he came out about 3 months ago, but 6 months probably before that. And he was absolutely petrified about being his authentic self because he thought, I won't be able to play football anymore. I won't be able to be around my friends. I might have to move.
Wow.
I mean, and that's why you have these micro-cultures. So you have Canal Street in Manchester, you have Soho in London. People don't feel accepted or haven't traditionally felt accepted in their own areas because it's not a popular choice or something that they're surrounded by. So they gravitate towards where they feel accepted. And then you get these micro-communities where people feel comfortable and they can be themselves. And that's great for them. But then all these other areas just lose gay people and don't ever develop. Whereas I think now, and this is where social media and media in general can help and has helped, the awareness can still reach those places even without necessarily having people still in those environments. And then by consequence, people can stay in those environments like I have. I haven't moved. But everyone now has a gay footballer in their area, community, and that person is the same person that they knew for 30 odd years before that and hasn't changed. So their stereotype or their opinion has changed of what a gay person is or a gay man is as well. So
what for anyone listening then, what can we do? Because my takeaway point from this is that a lot of the intended discrimination is better now. It's getting a lot better, but it seems to be it's a lot of the maybe naivety or unintended discrimination is the thing that's still hovering about, and it's because of the lack of education. So what can we do? Obviously, we're raising awareness and education around it. What can anyone do? Listen to this, because there will be other examples, like you said. Was it your friend or your manager? And he was like, I want to understand. It could still be a generational thing that people are still catching up with this. What advice can we do to just make this not such a taboo subject? And also, like you said, stop goading like what the FA is doing and just trying to get this next person to come out. Stop taking so much interest in it for an entertainment aspect, but interest in it in fact because we actually want to make a positive change and because we care.
Yeah. I think the first thing is language. Yeah. Because that's if we need more people to be their authentic selves, they need to feel more comfortable to be their authentic selves. They're only going to do that if they feel that they can do that in their environment. So the amount of people that I've spoken to over the last couple of years that have either already done it and I'm too late to influence it because they're now past retirement age anyway, but have quit football from an early age, even though they loved it because they didn't think they'd be accepted.
Wow.
And honestly, the numbers are staggering. But I've had a lot of people saying, I wish someone like you was around when I was younger. Oh, how old are you? Oh, I'm 50, but I quit football when I was 16. Why? Well, because I didn't think it would accept me. And that's a very familiar story. So some people I've actually managed to speak to that are still 18, 19, 20 that have either only just quit or thought about quitting. And you can still affect that. You can still change that. And my whole point on that ethos is that if you don't fit... So logic doesn't always come into the equation here. People just panic and think, oh, they're not going to accept me. They're not going to like me. So I'm not going to give them that opportunity because people don't like rejection. Mm-hmm. So they take control. Right, I'm just going to quit. I'm just not going to play. If you think logically, you've just done to yourself what you're worried they'll do to you.
Yeah.
Because you're worried that if you tell them, you can't play for them anymore. So your illogical path is then to not play for them anymore.
Yeah.
Same outcome. So why not give them the opportunity?
And probably be surprised by the outcome.
And in my opinion, in most environments in the UK, it's not Saudi Arabia perhaps, but in the UK, in our environment, I think 99 times out of 100, those people would now, these days, be pleasantly surprised by the reaction. There's a guy called Jam who plays Sheppey United in Kent. He came out after seeing my story last year, and he filmed him telling his teammates and put it on social media.
Wow.
And
I never saw that actually. That's incredible.
His name's Jamal Hamill, I think. But if you look it up on Sheppey United's Twitter, you'll see it, and it's a great video because you can see only two players already knew. He'd told two individually, but then he told the group together, and the reaction's great. It's a really positive. You can see they're a close team. They're a good team. Powerful. They didn't care. I mean, most footballers won't. Honestly, like most footballers will be like, do I like you? Well, that's not going to change whether you're gay or not. Fine. Are you a good player? Because we want to win.
Yeah.
They're the things that people care about. And it's the same with a lot of managers now as well. And the good thing is that those kind of generational players and managers that maybe would have cared more are either out of the game or coming to the end. So this is me at 35.
Wow.
But it is definitely an environment that's more accepting than people think. But if you never give football the opportunity to pleasantly surprise you, then it never will. So make sure that if your biggest risk is, I can't play for this team anymore, if that's the worst thing that can happen, don't make that decision for yourself. Give them the opportunity, because actually what will probably happen is they'll tell you, oh, God, you shouldn't have stressed about this. We're fine with it. You're still you.
Yeah.
We still love you. You're still a good player. What's wrong with you? And then you can carry on playing for that team.
Absolutely.
And if not, I did have a guy contacting me recently that he had to leave a team. So he came out, and it wasn't a semi-pro level, but it was amateur level. He came out to a team, and they weren't cool with it. But basically, the manager didn't pick him anymore. Didn't say anything. Just stopped picking him. So he then left and rightly took to Twitter to call it out.
Yeah.
But then he got contacted by loads of football clubs to say, your manager's a wanker, your teammates are fucking cavemen, we'd love you to play for us. Like loads of football clubs. And that's another message in itself. So even if your team rejects you, which is very unlikely nowadays, but even if they do, there's going to be loads of teams that will have you. And mine included. So anyone in my area or that's willing to travel to Thetford, there will always be a place for you to play football. And even if you're not good enough for our first team, if you are, please get in touch. But even if you're not, we've got a reserve team. We've
Danny.
got under 23.
This is your soccer aid call up.
This is it now. It's my time to shine.
We can't have two fitness models in the football club. Competitive.
There's only one razor in the changing room.
We actually do need a striker, though, to be fair. And he keeps telling me he can put the ball in the net. So
It's
Maybe.
it's a brilliant example of actually the good prevailing, though.
yeah.
There isn't
Yeah,
it?
definitely.
Exactly. And that's the message, because the majority, I believe firmly, the majority of people are good. And that's in football and in life. Mm-hmm. So the minority might not be, but who cares? Don't let the minority rule your life, rule your decisions, and dictate your happiness. You only get one life. So to live it unhappily is a complete waste and a tragedy. And so many people have done it. And Justin Fashanu is a great example, because he tried his best to live his life the way that he wanted to. And back then, there were lots of factors to it, but he ended up taking his own life. But nowadays, what tends to happen is the people that take their lives are not the people that are their true authentic selves, because they're generally accepted and happy, and it's like a weight lifted off their shoulders. And almost everyone that I've spoken to at any level that's come out in the last few years feels like that weight has been lifted off them, even when they occasionally get abused. Josh last weekend got abuse from the stand, and he took to Twitter and social media and called it out. And the response that he's had from brands, other fans, professional players supporting him shows you majority of football is behind you. The majority of people are behind you, not behind the bigot. They're really not. So even when those little things happen, you are in a strong position. They're the ones in a weak position. So don't let the fear of that one little thing every so often, dictate your happiness, because there's 24 hours in a day, 52 weeks in a year. So why be unhappy for all of that time because you're hiding something, because you're worried about a consequence, when actually, if you're open and you're happy, it can just be the odd moment that provides you with a challenge that then you'll ultimately get support from the majority anyway. And I think that's really, really important, because too many people, and this is what's got to stop, too many people have taken their own lives because they see that as their only way out. I've had people contact me, families of people that have killed themselves because of their sexuality and not wanting to deal with it. Wow. And ultimately, and this is what I said to my parents, because as much as I've talked really positively about my parents and as great as our relationship was and now is again, there was a period of time when I came out where it wasn't, because of my mum's religion and her beliefs around what's right and wrong because of what, you know, somebody wrote in a book 2,500 years ago. And
You said not to get into this.
yeah, I couldn't help the one that I did.
He's trying hard. you can tell.
Oh, don't expand. And my dad, because he's you know, where he was brought up and how he was brought up. But my dad was one of those people that, and this is why I say this about wanting to be educated. My dad was homophobic. There is no way around it. Now, he wasn't hateful. He didn't abuse anybody. He just wasn't comfortable around it, and he didn't want his son to be gay. But he desperately didn't want to lose his relationship with his son. And it ultimately made me coming out and being gay, and maybe that's part of the reason why God made me the way that he made me, if you want to take my mum's stance and believe in that, was for people like him, because he wanted to understand and he wanted to repair our relationship. I didn't talk to him for 2 weeks. It's probably the longest we've ever gone without talking. I found that painful, but I knew what I had to do. I didn't, even with my parents, I didn't want people in my life that were homophobic, racist, or whatever else. And that was the most let down I'd ever felt from anyone with my parents at that time. Considering everything they'd done for me, I felt completely let down by them. After 2 weeks, he said, look, I want to sort this out. I want to understand. And I said, listen, I've always told you my door's open. I just don't want to have a relationship with you while you have the beliefs that you have.
Yeah.
Because they both wanted a relationship with me, but they wanted a relationship with the person that hadn't come out. So we can have exactly the same relationship, Matt. I just never want to meet anyone that you're with, if you have a partner or anything like that. I never want to talk about it. I want to almost pretend that you're not gay. So everything else, just go back to how it was and nothing else changes. 99% of the time, that might be fine because I am the same person. But you're telling me that I have to censor telling you that, oh, so my partner now, Lorenzo, oh, it's Lorenzo's birthday. Or, oh, what are you doing at the weekend? Okay, I can't tell them I'm going out with Lorenzo for his birthday. So what do I say? Oh, I'm going out for a meal. Who with? Oh, now I've got to lie. It's bullshit. And I'm not that type of person anyway. So I said, until you can accept me, all of me, for who I am, and that's a part of who I am, now that I know, I'm not running from it. So if you want to run from it, that's fine, but don't expect me to have a relationship with you and pretend that doesn't exist, because that's not authentic. Mm-hmm. So until you can accept all of me, you're not having any of me. And I cut them both off. Dad lasted 2 weeks, Mum lasted 4 months. But we addressed it, and now the relationship is fine. That's a bit harsh, actually. It's good. It's like it was before. But it took some time. So anyone that's thinking about coming out, it's not, you know, you might have bumps in the road. You might lose a friend or two. You might even have a loss in the family, potentially. I don't want to be sitting here saying that everything's amazing, there's candy floss everywhere and unicorns and you know, nothing ever is going to go wrong. There might be people that don't accept it. But you know what? The way that I dealt with that is, if you can't accept something that's something you should be able to accept, I don't want you in my life. In the same way that if my best friend's like a brother to me, we've been close most of my life. If we were in a pub in a week's time and he racially abused someone, I wouldn't want to be his friend anymore. Yeah. No matter how much I love him, because that changes who he is to me. I don't want you in my life if that's how you are. And as much as I love my parents, if you're racist or homophobic, to me, you're not the people I thought you were. So I'm fine with losing you. And that has to be your attitude and what you're prepared for if you want to be happy and you want to be yourself, because otherwise you're just going to be allowing the problem to continue, making allowances for people that you shouldn't be making allowances for. And if those people are generally good, they'll want to change anyway. My dad completely wanted to understand. One of the things that was an educational point for him was understanding that it wasn't a choice. And this is another big misconception. He kept using that word. Oh, you know, even when he accepted it. Oh, you know, I love you and you're my son. And like, even when I told him, the day I told him before I left the house, Mum ran out the room screaming and crying and shouting, you're not. I am. Dad hugged me and said, as he hugged me, said, I love you, you're still my son, and I'm still very proud of you. I just wish you weren't gay, and I don't like that part. And the end of that took away all of the beginning. For me, it's like, okay. And that was kind of the moment. But he kept using the word, it's your choice. No, it's not. The only choice that you've got as a gay man is to embrace it and accept it, or to live a lie and pretend that you're not. That's not really a choice, but it is a choice that you've got. You don't choose whether you are or are not gay. You just choose whether you accept it and tell people and live your life or not. And too many people have felt that I can't do that, and have then either committed suicide, quit football, left jobs, relocated, all because of something that they can't help.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to do that, and I don't think anyone should have to do that. Now, he eventually, after then coming to my office and spending 2 hours in there talking to me, and completely fair play to him, he had lots of questions. He wanted to understand, but I kept correcting him when he used the word choice. It's not a choice. It's not. And eventually you get angry with it because you said it 3 times now. Listen, it's not a choice. But now he gets it. He understands that. But because he wasn't born gay, he thought, oh, well, it's a choice. It's like whether you choose. It's like I said to him, it's like, do you choose to be attracted to women? No. Well, I am attracted to women. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but I can walk down the street and say that a man's good looking or not, but I don't sleep with him or want to sleep with him. I said, so when you walk down the street and you see that good looking man, is it like John Taylor, is it he's a good looking chap? Is it God, I wish I looked like him? Or is it that? He said, no, it's not that. So there you go then. So it's a completely different thing. Completely different thing. I can walk down the street now and say, she's good looking. God, she's a good looking woman. See loads of good looking women. But I don't have to want to sleep with them or go on a date with them or marry them and have children with them. Whereas he did. And I think you need to understand that just because you're in your mindset, that people can be in the opposite mindset. And that's chemical and natural, not something that's a choice or a decision. Because the reality is, and this is being completely blunt about it, who in their right mind would choose it? And that's not because there's anything wrong with it. I'm not ashamed of it at all. I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. In fact, I know there's not. And nobody should be. But the reason I say who in their right mind would choose it, because of all the stresses that we've been talking about for the last hour and a bit. Yeah. Because it's an easier life if you're straight. The easiest life is to be straight, a straight man. But you can't choose that. So the next 2 decisions which are both difficult in different ways, but I believe nowadays one is a lot easier than the other. And that is, I'm a gay man, I'm going to embrace it and live my life. The worst is that you choose to deny it and choose to live in secret or hide it or repress it. And I've never met anyone that's been happy making that decision. And I've had a lot of people contact me over the last couple of years. Not a single person that's done that has been happy, and it's never ended well. It's usually ended in either a suicide, a relocation, or I got married, I had a couple of kids, and then I just couldn't keep it up and I left my partner and, okay. Wow. So, and that, by the way, that is tragic. That's tragic for the person themselves, for the partner,
the kids,
and even for the kids.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not condemning it. I understand it. I get it. It's the extreme of someone trying to live the life they think they should be living, to be accepted by society, to think that this is the path I should be going down. So I'm going to try. Yeah, she's great. She's wonderful. I did that, by the way, for the year before I was 31 when I came out. The year before that, I was completely single/celibate because I was just off everything. The year before that, I was with a girl called Kerry. Amazing person. Didn't know I was gay at this point. Amazing looking. Amazing personality. No stress, no drama, really easygoing. Successful career. Literally, if you could have written down perfect partner, it would be her. But there was something for me, and this is the point where it made me think, do you know what, you just got to stop this now. There was something for me that just wasn't clicking. And I would end up, even after being with her 9 months, be like, go a week without seeing her because I'm too busy. And she'd be like, are we going to see each other this weekend? I've got a lot on, and maybe, and how about next week? And just kind of fitting her in kind of these little, that's not right. That's not fair on her. It's not fair on me either, but especially it's not fair on her. So I ended that relationship. I ended it by saying, listen, this isn't fair on you. I don't want you to get any more emotionally involved or attached when I don't think this is going to go anywhere. It's nothing to do with you. And she's like, oh, here we go. You know, that it's not you, it's me thing. But it honestly was. It wasn't her, it was me. But then I decided I'm not doing this to anyone else. I am not doing that to anyone else. So if that means that I'm never with anyone again, fine. And I spent a year on my own, not with anybody. And I needed that. But it was for a different reason than I thought. I thought it was just because, you know, that's you now. You're just going to be single and buried in work and addicted to your job and addicted to football and everything like that. But how long can you go on being a football playing bachelor? I mean, there's a shelf life to it, right? And then I got a message on Instagram from, actually that's a lie. I got added on Instagram or followed on Instagram by somebody that I didn't know. And very good looking, mixed race guy, which by the way is my type, but don't panic. And
is that why you need a striker?
Yeah. I don't actually care how good you are. And it was weird because I didn't know this person, and I was only on Instagram for a short period of time before that, so I wasn't like I am now quite as used to it or on it as regularly. I only got on it because a load of my friends kept saying, you know, you'd love this, and why would I love this? It's a photo sharing app. Like, oh yeah, great. And then obviously the rest is history. But I only got added by people back then that either I knew or that wanted something. A girl or a gay guy adding you and following you, whatever else. And I'd had that before. And every other gay guy that had approached me, either in life or on social media or whatever, there was no interest at all. It was just like, you know, no offense, I've got nothing against it, but that's not me. I'm straight, but thank you, I appreciate it, the compliment or whatever else. And that was kind of how it was always left. I say always, it wasn't weekly. It was just like, you know, a few times a year maybe. But this time, the person added me, followed me, followed me, and didn't contact me again for like 3 days. And I thought, that's a bit odd. I'm sure I don't know you. Are they from the fitness industry? It says they're based in London. Have I crossed your path modelling? Have I crossed your path in designing a gym, or what is it? So I messaged them saying, do I know you? And the response was, no, but do you want to? And I was like, oh. But the feeling here was very different. It was the first time in my whole life that it was like, yeah, I actually do, but I don't know why, and this is a bit weird, and get your head around that. And that was the kind of catalyst, the moment that over the next 6 months of and I won't go into the details of you know, the head fuck that was for 6 months, but it was up and down, up and down, up and down. But it made me realise why it never worked out with people like Kerry or anyone before that, because actually now I was attracted to a guy for the first time, and this was a bit odd. And then we met up, and I remember the first date we had, and I went down to Farringdon to meet him after work on a Thursday night or something. Me being me, I organised the first date, and it was a class, an exercise class before dinner. So we went to another space, which was kind of Third Space's boutique workout. So we did a 60-minute workout. Halfway through, he goes, I fucking hate you. How good it's working. Yeah. Went to dinner. But I remember before I met him, I had a feeling that I'd never had before. I've been on hundreds of dates, and I'd never had that butterflies or nervousness or excitement or never had it. And I was 31, and people were like, that was my mates at 15, 16 and whatever. And I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, so I was super chilled, super cool. I don't get butterflies, I don't get nervous. What are you talking about? But it was because I didn't really give a shit. Whereas this time, I was like, I had all of that, but at 31, feeling like a teenager and be like, oh, well, this is a bit weird. Like, I was fine to go into big meetings or present to audiences of 800 or 1,000 people and talk on stage, and no butterflies, no nervousness. I'm meeting one guy at a Costa Coffee to go for a workout and dinner at 31 years old, and I'm nervous, and I'm like, and that was the single moment that I can say I 100% at that moment knew. 100% knew, and there was no looking back. I thought, okay, right, you're gay.
Wow.
I love that.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
It's a brilliant story. That's absolutely incredible. Matt, so much information there for people, but so much actual stuff that could be actionable. So much stuff that people can go away and think about. A couple things I want to go through before we wrap up. The second is a little bit of a challenge that we've got for you, which we haven't told you about.
Have we warned them about this?
So I don't think I've told you about this yet. So I'm just going to let you sit there and sweat for the next minute whilst you answer the first question. We've talked a lot about equality. We've talked a lot about normalising these conversations, and we've talked a lot about how exercise has benefited you. Tell us very quickly about where you are moving to now with regards to your career and with regards to Amplify. So I think this is something that the listeners would love to hear. Just a tiny little bit of context. Me and Danny are involved in Amplify. And just tell anyone listening just a little bit about that and the impact. Anything you are allowed to talk about just now. I think this podcast will be out in a couple of months anyway, so I'm sure it'll be fine to talk about everything now. Anything that you want to share with people about this mission that you have in order to totally redefine what exercise is?
Yeah, so I historically, for the last 10 and a half years, prior to the last 3 years at Amplify, I've always designed gyms and been involved in the fitness industry. So I was the commercial director at Escape Fitness. I was heavily involved in brand and strategy, really. I sat on the board, and we spent 10 and a half years supplying equipment, but mainly designing gyms for some of the biggest health and fitness facilities outside of North America. And then the last couple of years that I was there, we went into North America as well, which was quite cool and exciting. The reason I left that, because I didn't think I would leave that business. I mean, it was a great position. I was on the board, doing very well financially, loved what I did, had a great team. And I met the founder or the co-founder of Amplify. And originally it was going to be a partnership. So how could we be one of the fitness and brand partners for Amplify? He told me all about what they were doing and the projects, and it sounded exciting. And then we kept speaking quite regularly, and I had ideas on what else the platform could do, and the social media side of it, and the trainer side of it, and the coaches. And it just kind of growed arms and legs. And then he asked me to come and join the team and asked whether I'd be the commercial director. And I ended up investing in the company as well. I left Escape, which was a very, very hard decision for me, and joined the team 3 years ago. And what we're trying to do, and we're about to launch, so this is coming out in a few months, so this is January. We're about to launch in a couple of weeks, and for the first time. And it will be a ramp up, but we are a free health and fitness platform with a social media platform built in for health, fitness, sport, nutrition, education. And one of the key things that we're doing is working with the biggest brands, the biggest stars in fitness, in health, in nutrition, in mental health and mindfulness as well. And we'll expand, obviously, that repertoire over time. And in corporate and in health clubs. So we're doing a lot, and we're bringing all of that together in a health, not just a fitness app, because one of the key things here is that life is not just about fitness. And if you want to be healthy, it's not just about what you do in the gym. It's about how you eat, how you think, getting the right amount of rest, enjoying life, being happy. It's not one thing, it's the balance of everything. So one of our key features is something called life balance, which basically scores people and educates people on how to have a nice balance across all of those pillars. So fitness is our first key milestone, but we will be doing nutrition and mental health as well. A lot of the stars that we've got are sports stars, so professional athletes, ex-professional athletes. So that'll be a big part of our social platform. But also there'll be workouts and programs that they'll either be writing or co-writing with experienced personal trainers, and workouts that they'll be filming as well. And people will be able to get a certain amount of free content from them, but also have the ability to pay a small subscription for a certain star that they follow, and get exclusive behind the scenes content, access into their life, but also really high level workout plans, programs for particular outcomes or goals. So if you love Nicola Adams and you're really into boxing, you'll be able to follow Nicola Adams. If you love Danny and you're really into mindfulness and lifestyle and feeling fit and good about yourself, you'll be able to follow Danny and subscribe to his extra content. And same with Dan, and same with Mac. And if you're really desperate, you can also follow mine. But
I was going to say if you're desperate, you'd follow Dan, but you stole my joke.
So it's really exciting, and more will happen over time as we add to this. But yeah, it's an exciting start now. It's been 3 years in the making to launch it to market. Wow. As with technology, there's obviously been a couple of delays, and also, is this the right time? I actually want to add some more. So we've got a really ambitious team, a really good team, and part of the consequence of that, I guess, could sometimes be, actually, we want to add one more thing before it's finished. So the good news is, although the launch is slightly later than it was going to be, it's actually going to be a lot bigger and better than it would have been if we did it a few months ago. So it's exciting.
Very exciting.
When I was down meeting with the team at your, there's one of the events that you were doing, and there was an individual called Elliot who works on the app, and I was chatting with him, and I was just sort of similar thing to you, talking about frustrations of launching a business. And I think for people who are business inclined, we have sometimes the creativity and we have the work ethic and we have all these things that people think, obviously those are things that you need, to create or run a business. But then one of the things that we're talking about, the frustrations, is patience. And sometimes you need to have that patience. And I was sharing my frustrations with, I've got this idea, it's incredible. Like, it's just building and building. And he just turned around to me and he was just like, Dan, doesn't matter how many people you have working on it, it still takes 9 months to make a baby.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's true. And that actually helped massively. So, Amplify will be launching very, very soon. Before we get to this little challenge, Matt, a massive thank you, I think, from all of us.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not saying this because you're here, but I think that was probably one of the most powerful conversations that we've had so far. So informative. And thank you for, sharing your experiences. And I know this is such a cliche thing to say, but if it helps one person, then we've done a job. But I have no doubt that this could potentially help so many people. So thank you for that. When it comes to your personal journey, and when it comes to you posting pictures of you pouting and with your top off, where can people, if somebody thinks, look, I really like Matt's voice, I would really like to see a selfie of him singing in his car, where can they find you?
It's all great quality content as well, especially the Lion King.
Probably charge for it, to be honest.
I could put that on my sub.
Hakuna
Matata with Matt and Danny, or
it'll be like one of those Christmas albums when the Christmas special albums come out.
So people can follow me at the Matt Morton on Instagram, and no arrogance, by the way, in putting someone already had Matt Morton. Really, really annoyingly. I'm on Facebook, just Matt Morton, and Twitter is, I don't even know what Twitter is, but just search Matt Morton or put 16 in it and you'll probably find it somewhere.
What announce our little challenge that we've got. So we do this with everyone, so you're not alone. I'll let Ben run through it with you. And whilst Ben's just sorting that, honestly, a massive thank you from all of us.
Just to reiterate what Dan said, it's been a very powerful conversation, and I can't wait for people to hear this one. It's going to help a lot of people. So
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I think it's so important as well, because when you're talking through the podcast, you've been talking about how important it is that people educate themselves, and I think this will go a long way to help educate others that might not have came across something like this before.
Yeah.
So
I think there's one other thing that I probably haven't focused on so much that I should, that you just actually reminded me about, around education, and language is a massive thing. And what stops people coming out or being themselves can often be stuff that's misconstrued or misunderstood. So language in a dressing room, for example, if you take football, but also in the playground or at work, a lot of guys, and I used to be very guilty of this, because it's ingrained in you from a young age. An insult that's a throwaway comment, just like you wouldn't think about calling someone an idiot or a twat or a dickhead or whatever. It's the same when people call each other gay or perf or faggot. Most people, 99% of people, aren't doing that because they're homophobic. They're doing it because it's just what they say. It just rolls off the tongue. And I've never been discriminatory in any way. As you can probably tell, I'm the opposite. But I still use that language, which doesn't really add up at all. But it's just, for me, it used to be like calling someone an idiot or a twat. It was just, oh, shut up, you perf, or whatever, gay boy. Never meant it. And I don't use that language anymore. And I'm conscious of not using that language. And neither does anyone around me. The problem is, until you're aware that you're using that language and how it can affect other people, you will use it. In the same way that years and years ago, people would have used derogatory slurs around race, and they might use it even if there wasn't somebody in the room that was of that race. Unacceptable in any circumstances. But you wouldn't use it if you were conscious of using it. And it's the same with homophobia now. So I'm sure in most dressing rooms, players still say gay, perf, faggot, whatever. And that to them isn't because they're homophobic, it's just what they do. But it never happens in mine. because people are conscious that, oh, Matt's gay, so I can't say that. So people have now got used to not using it. The challenge that I would like to set everybody is, no matter whether there's a gay person that you know of in your dressing room or not, don't use it, because it will stop them feeling comfortable. Yep. Now, it's different for me, because I didn't realise until I was 30, 31, and I was one of the alphas in the dressing room, couldn't give a shit what anyone says. So if you're saying that, it's not going to affect me coming out or being myself or whatever. Because if I come out and you use it, you'll only do it once. That was kind of my attitude. Not everyone is me. There might be a 16, 17-year-old trying to break into the first team that's dealing with their sexuality internally. Here's all the senior players in the dressing room calling each other puffs, faggots, gay boys, whatever, thinks, fuck, they hate me. They won't accept me. I've got no chance. I've got to hide this. If I want to get into the team, I can't tell them. Or, fuck, they hate me, I've got to leave. Or I've got to quit football. Or fuck, they hate me, I'm going to kill myself. And you need to realise these things and be conscious about them, because most football players won't think about that when they're using these every week. They won't think, there could be someone in here that's really affected by me calling that person that I think is straight a faggot or a puff or a gay boy. It means nothing to me. It means everything to that 16-year-old that's wanting to break into that first team, wanting to feel accepted, and either ashamed, embarrassed, or petrified about who they really are. So if people can start thinking about their language that they use in the dressing room, that will make a massive, massive difference to the problem that we're talking about, because people will then feel more comfortable being themselves and less conscious about that if they were to do it. And by the way, now, because there is somebody that's gay in the dressing room at Thetford, the gay jokes are normally started by me. Because I want to break the ice. I don't want people walking on eggshells. But I don't use those words. But I'll give you an example. So we had one of the players come to a game once, and he wasn't wearing the tracksuit. And he was wearing the most ridiculous outfit. It was out there. Like, it was even more ridiculous than some of the things Danny wears. It was crazy.
Fashion model.
And he thought we was both models. Well, we were friends a minute ago.
We were, until you reminded everyone I'm 8 leagues off the Premier League. But he walked in and I was like a Hawaiian shirt or something, and literally everyone was like, and I just went, fucking hell, I thought I was the gay one in this team. What are you doing? And obviously everyone laughs and it's banter and whatever else, but that type of thing is fine because it's coming from me and in an environment that even if there was someone that's gay, they're going to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But if you're starting to abuse people on a training ground or in a game because you don't think they're gay, calling them gay, faggot, puff, whatever, if someone is and they're hearing that, that's going to affect them massively. And being aware and conscious of that is going to make a massive difference. So, yeah, that was kind of the last point that I wanted to make.
Love it.
Amazing.
Thank you for adding it in.
Okay, right. We've got something for you.
So
I love how unfazed you are.
We always do this cynical laugh when we say as well, we've got something.
I haven't been nervous until that.
yeah, it's nothing much, but we do have a Happy to Health challenge. So our initials are H to H, which is obviously head to head as well. So gathering you're quite competitive, if anyone hasn't picked up on that quite yet, you are basically going through the same challenge that all of our other guests have been through.
Okay.
And you are trying to beat them,
Fine.
basically.
So this is like Top Gear.
Yes, exactly.
So we've had Danny Buck, we've had James Exton, we've had
other
Sky, we've had Mac. If you are more competitive than Mac, then
oh, I don't know about that. Yeah, it depends if I care about it, I might be. But if not, if I lose, we'll pretend I didn't care. Spot on.
Right, fair enough. So basically, all that we need you to do is hold a squat for 60 seconds and answer as many quick fire questions as possible.
Okay.
Okay. Mac and Sky are currently at the top of the leaderboard on 13. So 13 is the question.
Do you have to get them correct, or can I just say anything?
Depends on the question.
it's
no,
more,
I'm joking.
it's more personal. It's more personal.
Okay.
It's quick fire. So,
is there chance of a toilet break first? Because I've been shaking my leg under this table for a good 30 minutes.
No, this will happen.
Oh, no.
No, we can do if you need to go now. Do you want to go now?
Yeah, that'd be good.
60 seconds.
Yep.
If you, for some reason, were to not hold for 60 seconds, the number of questions you have answered by that point will be your total score.
It's almost pointless you saying that.
Okay, I'll get
You get the timer up.
I'll get a timer ready. Ben will try and ask the questions as quick as possible. And
how are you feeling?
Amazing.
Confident?
Yeah. Good. Wow. Very confident.
Hear that, Mac? Right, so the score to beat is 13. Ready to rock?
Ready to go. You ready?
You tell me when to get into position and I'll go.
Okay.
Don't talk slowly though, you got to ask quickly.
I'll ask quickly, don't worry.
Okay, squat in 3, 2, 1, off we go.
When was the last time you were drunk?
2 weeks ago.
When are you most productive?
In the afternoon.
Who is your inspiration and why?
Roy Keane, because he's a legend.
What's your favourite number and why?
16, because it's Roy Keane's number.
In which subject were you worst at school?
Maths.
In which subject were you best at school?
English.
What scares you?
Nothing.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
If you could live anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Miami.
What would you change about yourself?
Nothing.
What's something that you know you have to do but do not like doing?
Halfway.
Playing cricket.
What's something that you like doing?
Football.
What's your favourite hobby?
Football.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
What's your favourite colour?
Red.
What's your favourite cuisine?
Italian.
Let's go.
What's the first thing you notice about someone when you meet them?
Their eyes.
What's the best compliment you could receive?
You smell nice.
What's your favourite film?
Watership Down.
If you could be any animal, what would it be?
Dog.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
An absolute... Oh.
That was incredible.
That was brilliant.
But what is it? The best compliment you could receive is you smell nice.
It was the way you said it as well. It was the way you said it. Also, far too much hesitation on the cats versus dogs. Surely
But then he
it's
said he would
dogs.
want to be a dog if any animal. So that's a bit
Well,
controversial.
there's a difference between wanting to be something and preferring... So cats are just easy, aren't they? My cat looks after itself. The only reason I didn't get a dog is because I'd have to walk it, eat things.
Right, so it's a maintenance thing.
It's a maintenance thing.
Maintenance.
Far too much effort goes into me.
So, do you want to know what your score is?
Yes.
Do you want to take a guess? How many?
18.
Up.
19.
Up.
20.
20.
Congratulations.
Hang on. Well
Well
done.
done.
You're the
Right,
new leader.
Matt Morton is top of the Happy to Health leaderboard. Which
Unlucky
is
Mac.
And if you didn't know, he loves Roy Keane.
Yeah. Roy Keane. Cats or dogs? Roy Keane. We'll just quickly say thanks, I think, from all of us. So we'll go round. Mate, honestly, a massive thank you from me. Thanks for everything and coming in. I think this is going to be so impactful for many people. So.
Yeah, thanks again, mate. I think it's such an important conversation that we've had today, and if we can help one person out there who's listening to this that's struggling with their sexuality or know a family or friend that is, then hopefully this can help them.
Just echoing what you guys said, and also thank you for just being so generous with your time and the enthusiasm and kind of the optimism that you've brought is really, really powerful. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Cheers. Appreciate it.
Okay, and that is a wrap. Thank you very much for listening. We really hope that you enjoyed that. Guys, listen, as always, please show us some love. Please follow us at Happy to Health Podcast on both Instagram and on YouTube. Please show us some support. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Out of all of our episodes, this is one of the ones that is going to be really, really powerful. So if there's someone that you think that this can positively impact, please let them know. And we'll really look forward to seeing you at the next episode.